Woodworking machinery can cause serious injury. Always read and understand the user manuals for all equipment used. Remember, dust, fumes, liquid, sharp or heavy moving objects can be deadly. Always wear appropriate personal protective equipment or PPE. Any omission of PPE during this presentation is to aid communication and is not an endorsement of the practice. The Nova Woodturners Guild, or NWG, its authors, presenters, and producers assume no responsibility or liability for accidents or damages resulting from the information conveyed within this presentation. Only you can keep yourself safe. Please do. If you're unsure, don't do it.
Which brings us to today's demo, which is by our friend Dave, who we've had demoed before, and it's titled Turning a Wave Bowl. And then I discovered that he's not turning anything. So, I'll let him explain that, but anyway, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So this talk is going to be mostly about making wave bowls, what a wave bowl is, and the jig that I've built for the guild. So this is going to outlive me, I hope. Anyway, so I think we'll start off, do the presentation, and then we'll talk about the jig. But this is the jig right here. So it has a lot of features to it that your standard jig doesn't have. It's built very robust. Anyways, I'll talk more about that later. But this is why we're here today, is about this. Okay, so making wave bowls. What is a wave bowl anyway? Well, simply put, a wave bowl is a segmented bowl made up of one or more rings cut in a radius through the bowl to make a continuous ring around the bowl. Now, I don't know that John Beaver is the person who came up with this idea, but he's certainly the person, the go-to person for wave bowls. He's from the west coast of California, master wave bowl turner, often demos making wave bowls at AAW meetings. He will travel to guilds and do demos there too. Another master of wave bowls is John Vaith, and I'm going to be showing you some of his work as well. And after that, I'm going to talk about how you go about making a wave bowl, and then we'll talk about the guild, about the jig itself. Okay, so this is a recessed wave bowl with a dyed interior. And so the interesting thing on this is the little relief that you see right here. And it makes it look like you have a bowl inside a bowl, but you really don't. It's just that there's a little groove put in there to keep the dye from spilling over into this. And so you can kind of see the arc here, and you're going to cut out a space. So you're going to end up with 3 pieces on this one. You're going to have an upper piece, a lower piece, and the wave. And how you do all this is an interesting process. Oops. So that last one was a recessed wave. So this one has a protruding wave through it. And it's been dyed on the outside and left natural on the inside. You can sort of see a little bit of the wave, the back side of the wave coming through here, if you consider this going around it. And you'll note this one is quite a thin bowl. One of the things about wave bowls is they often use kind of a bellied bowl shape. It accentuates the wave more or less. If you had something that's really tapered like this, the wave doesn't come out quite the same, not as symmetrical. Whoops. Here. I love this one.
Holy man.
So this is an offset wave cut. And so you do your first cut, which is this one, and then you're going to rotate that bowl a certain amount, and you're going to do a second cut. And so that you get a thicker zone and a thinner zone, which then gives you quite a different look in a bowl. Now, all three of those bowls were by John Beaver. Now, you can also have a multi-wave bowl where you cut it into more sections. And I'm not sure that these are probably symmetrical, although maybe not. Maybe that's offset just slightly because it looks like you have a narrower zone and a wider zone. So they offset it each time. This is by John Vaith, this bowl. And again, you can see even more that they've made a real shoulder here so that the color doesn't spill over and you get that kind of bowl inside a bowl look. Here's a multi-wave offset one with quite narrow, wide bands, and it's quite an interesting piece. So, in some situations, you might want to have contrasting wood. So you might want to do it in walnut and birch or maple. And so, if you have two bowls that are identical in size, although these two aren't identical in size, but at least they don't look like it in this photo. But I assume that they probably aren't. But you would cut multiple bands out of each of the bowls. And then you take the walnut ones from here and put them in this one, and the maple ones and put them in this one. And switch them up. And so in this case, you would end up with one band, 7 bands, 8 bands in total, 8 cuts that you would make through that bowl in order to, and really 16 cuts if you have 2 bowls that you're switching back and forth from. It's really important that you have an indexing system on your jig in order to do this kind of intricate work. Sorry about the low res on this, but this is just showing where you would cut these bands. These actually might be just veneer, laminated veneer, not doing it in two separate bowls and cutting away, but actually adding veneer laminates to your bowl. Sorry, it looks better on my computer than it does up there. This is another contrasting offset one where they've just either dyed these bands, and so the bands are actually crossing over each other. So you almost have to do it in steps where you put one layer in, glue it all up, cut it out, do it again, and do it again. So it's quite an interesting one. This is just a veneer accented wave, so you've cut out one, it's made of 3 pieces, and then you've put a layer of veneer in between to take up the saw curve. this is quite a simple one to do, and maybe a first one that somebody would want to try. And you can see that, you know, your everything has been registered on this so that your grain lines up almost perfectly as you go through.
So Dave, question.
Yes.
So you have turned a complete bowl,
Yes.
and then you cut that bowl, is that what happened?
That's what
You
happens.
cut it right through,
Yes.
and then you're adding pieces.
And you're adding pieces.
So
Yeah.
you have to cut those pieces separately.
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Can
match
I get
that
the
curve.
microphone? Actually, I just realized
sorry.
I don't have it.
So you're cutting pieces to match that curve?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
It's interesting. Yes. We'll talk a little bit more about that once
Yeah.
we see this jig
Okay.
setup.
Thanks.
This accented one is by John Vaith as well.
It's all natural.
This is another one by John Vaith, and it's interesting the way it's been cut.
Let's go through.
That he made that cut so that those two sections just touch together, and you know your figure comes right through the piece. It's really quite interesting. And then this has been bleached over here to give you that real white area.
That doesn't look like he cut it right through if you look at the inside.
Yeah, you can still
You
see
can
the
still
line.
see it. It's right here.
Oh, I see.
You see it's right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The bleaching is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Some wood's
That'd be
bleached.
tricky in itself.
It is. It's very tricky in itself. But remember that this piece is a separate piece.
Yeah.
And so I think when he did this, you're going to have this piece separate from that piece because it's going to be a join
Yeah.
here, I think. So there'll be two pieces that have to go back in and come together. So these could be bleached
Because if you look
away from it.
if you look at the back side, it's not going all the way through that other piece.
I think it is. I think you just can't see it very well.
Oh,
It
if you
comes-
follow
it
the
comes-
grain lines,
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
grain
it's-
lines are going.
It's come right here.
Yeah, if you look closely.
Look real close. It's
Yeah.
hard to see. Yeah. Here's a live edge one, and
Let's see, cuts there.
yeah, he's cut it coming. Well, is this cut in reverse? It might be cut in reverse. So because most of the waves go like that, but this one's actually swinging up to follow the curve of that bowl. And you can kind of see there's your cut lines here, there, and there. This is a grain matched one where the ring, and you can see that these are coming right through, and it looks like it is all one piece, but that's actually been cut away, cut right through and put back together. But because you index it all, you can line it up perfectly. And while you have this piece separate, you would sand it, put all of your radius on it. And so when you start this whole bowl is quite a bit thicker. It's the full thickness from here to the inside. And then you're going to take this piece out, you're going to put another piece in to take up that space. So a piece of spruce, let's say, that you're going to cut into an arc, put that in its place, and you're going to turn this whole bowl down a small amount. And I'll explain how we do that. And then put it all back together.
If you say so.
Yeah, it works. It works.
What voodoo course do you have to take?
This is a bleached exterior and a dyed interior. This is a John Beaver bowl. It's quite striking to me to be able to do something like that. And again, you get the illusion that you have a bowl inside of a bowl when you really don't. This is almost the same kind of a setup, but now he's put a variable width in there. So this is going down quite narrow here and widens out here, and it's because he's offset the two cuts. So a dyed exterior with a very rounded off wave, like that is almost rounded perfectly. And you can see then the wave lines here. And I think on this, he's actually put a little veneer strip in there just to accentuate it on the inside coming through. This is another interesting one from John Beaver, where he's taken the same bowl, cut it, just put almost a veneer line in between those two. So he's done basically one cut, put a veneer in to take up the width of the cut. While they're apart, he's then sanded these edges off to give you a radius, and then dyed the exterior of the upper half. It's a very striking bowl. So here we see with that variable offset and with a patina treatment. So Ted does treatments like this, similar types of treatments using paints to give you this kind of a very interesting look on things. Now, this is a hollow form with multiple waves. Now, I can see two ways of doing this. So, one of the ways would be to just start off with a full blank and do your cuts. And so you would end up with these bands. Now, these bands could be from another type of wood if you wanted to, or they could be from this. I'm not sure which way. But you can imagine if at the top end here you put a expanding dovetail into the top, you could literally take this piece and mount it onto your onto the lathe and hollow it out and put all of it back together again. So you wouldn't necessarily have to do a hollow form where everything came in through the top here and hollowed it out.
Dave,
Yes?
I'm trying to understand how you get the three pieces. Would that be, are you starting them with something that's bigger than that and cutting those waves out?
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's exactly what happens. So, like this is too thin to do something like that. You would have to have quite a thick wall on this. And you would try and get your inside more or less the way you want it. The outside would be extra. Then you would start making your cuts, and you would take those cuts all away. And so you've got these three wide bands taken out of that. Then you're going to put a little filler strip, that thickness, in there. Clamp it all back together. It's going to go in your lathe. Now, what you don't know is that there's a little indexing block put on each side of this. And I'll show you that later. So those indexing blocks keep everything lined up the way it should be, so all your grains line up. And so you would have this on your tailstock, and it would hold it all together. And you have pins running through on those pieces on the inside to keep it all together. And then you would turn this down. And what you would do in order to get it a consistent turn down so that it matches these is that you would take a drill. So imagine that's a drill bit. Make a small sleeve to go over this that can turn, so like maybe a 3/8 dowel with a drill about that size. And what you would do is mount this in your chuck so that only a small amount protrudes of the drill bit. And then you've got this collar that's kind of free spinning. And then you're going to take that and you're going to go here, 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 here. And put a series of holes, all that same depth. Then you're going to put this back on your lathe and you're going to turn it down until you just get those holes gone.
Marilyn Campbell, when she does her epoxy, does that, but she found she would inlay little pins, brass pins,
Yeah,
to show the depth.
yeah. But this is a much easier way.
Yeah, she just found you couldn't always see the holes because of
Yeah, you have to start and stop. And
because-
you got to go very carefully when you do it.
sawdust.
Yeah. But that's how you get this, so the contour proper on this. So that it all comes out evenly on these. So here's some lidded wave bowls, which is a different kind of a setup. So this, here you would just do one cut, or maybe you do two cuts, and that little shoulder bit is the intermediate cut that kind of locks the lids together. And yeah, so it's just a different way of doing things. I've tried to put together a whole collection of all the different types of wave bowls out there because you normally don't see these. These are very highly artistic bowls. There's another hollow form, and so this outer part has been dyed. You can see the same wormholes in all of it, so you know that this interior part of the wave was cut away. And so on these ones, then what you have to do is mount this onto another blank, hold it in, put it on your lathe, and turn this down to make it narrower. But you could just use like just 2x8s or something to make your form, and then slice out the form exactly the same as you did this in order to have something to put it all together. But I just think it's an interesting concept. And again, you could do this without having to go through coming in from a small hole at the top. You could actually just, the top of that would basically be like this, and this would expand into that, would expand into this, and then you're going to put your finial on top. We're almost done here on this part. This is an interesting one.
Oh, man. That took more than half an hour.
That took more than half an hour, for sure. For sure, for sure. One interesting thing is these are actually two bands that are probably reversed on each other, so that a lot of cuts to do that. And I would say that this is done on two separate types of bowl. You've got this top is a completely different wood from this spalted wood, and these interior ones are from this one. So he's had two bowls, cut them up on the jig, zing, 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 stacked it all together, and away you go. And that's really something. Segmented turners. You're still in. You can still be doing wave bowls with segments, and so you've cut out your wave, and then you cut that wave up into little segments and glued them all back in. Very time consuming, but an interesting piece. Here's another one where this one's a little different than that other one. I think that these little blocks are all cut and he's just put those in, and they're very narrow and they're just glued in place. I don't think that this was actually a wave cutout that was then cut into pieces, but I think the other one was.
It might be glued up like it's a piece of banding.
Yes, you would do this as banding and then cut it into sections and put it in. One of the problems is that these may not be actually straight because you've got an arc in it. So you've got to kind of match that up, a little bit of shaving here and there to make it all go together. Interesting. This is the John Beaver bowl as well. Most of these are John Beavers. This is an interesting one where you've offset it multiple times. Every cut you've offset it so that you get narrow and wide, and then put it all together with bands in between, some contrasting wood in between. And before you've put them back together, you've actually radiused this by hand, either with going on a sander and sanding it down, making those radiuses.
Some people clearly have too much time.
Too much time, yes. Yes.
I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun here. I'm trying hard to understand the concept of when you're talking about cutting the pieces.
Yes.
How are you cutting the pieces?
On a bandsaw.
Oh, okay.
And you're using a jig like this to do it. So we're going to get to that part.
I was just trying to put together how are you doing it
Yeah.
so I can understand it better.
Yes, exactly. And it's a difficult process. This is Coca-Cola bowl
No.
where they cut out the rings and just added a couple of pieces in between. Glued them back in. I would hate to think what that cost, just in wood to make that.
And time.
And time too, yeah. Yeah. This is another interesting treatment where you've got basically two different bowls going, and you cut an arc through both bowls and then put one bowl into the other one. So you probably have a matching bowl to this where this is on the bottom profile and then this is on the top. You know, you do it something like that. And I would say that this is dyed, not a different wood. This looks like a Duke probably with, I don't know, yellow heart maybe in between. Or maybe it's maple in between. But, you know, lots of cuts there to get that.
What kind of size are we talking about here?
So, we're mostly talking about bowls 8 inches max, down to about 5 inches. So 8 to 5. You can go a little bit bigger. I would say that that Coca-Cola one was probably 10 inches. But most of these are in the 5 to 8, 9 area. Okay. That's the bowls that we're going to show. So where to begin? All right, so start out with a thick-walled rough turn bowl, so maybe 1-inch thick walls. You, as I was saying before, you want to shape not like a bowl like this, but you want it to curve back in on itself, so that it's a bellied bowl. I call that a bellied bowl, where it's got like a belly sticking out the side. That's going to be the best. You have to decide how you want the wave. I mean, there's so many possibilities with waves. You have to decide whether you want the wave to be protruding, or recessed, or multiples, contrasting woods, offsets, dyed waves, on the interior, exterior. You know, it's endless things to think about when you start. So, for John Beaver, he likes to turn green wood, get his rough blank, and really thick walls on it, like a good inch thick, maybe even a little bit more, 1.25 inches thick. Put that aside for 6 months to dry, and then he'll bring it back, retrue it, get the outside shape that he wants, and make those decisions as to whether it's going to be interior, protruding, or inset, etc. And do that. And he says in his videos and stuff that native woods work best for this. So maple, birch, walnuts, all of those types of things. And cherry would be great. You need to put a sturdy foot on it to start. It can be a recessed hold out, but you have to have lots of wood in behind it, you know, if you're going to do a recess. Or you can just do, like this is just grabbed onto a tenon on the end, like that. This bowl was never meant to be done as a turn. I just didn't have anything to show. Shape the outside. You want to have the walls very, very much the same thickness as you go through, so you have to really pay attention to that as you go. Now, indexing blocks. This is going to be followed up by an actual picture where you'll see how the indexing blocks go in. But in order to keep everything registered, you're going to put a small MDF block in here and hot glue it to this contour on the two sides. So you'll actually decide where the apex of your curve is going to be, and you will run a line through like this. So on this bowl, I can see that I got nice curves going this way. So that's probably the way I'm going to line up my my cut. So I would want it to go this way across here. And so my blocks will go in here and here. And then you're going to drill a 1/4 inch hole through both blocks. And I'm going to have, I don't have it made yet, but I'm going to have a special jig that actually goes on top that will line it up, and it has bushings in it that will guide your drill so that you can do those drills and get them, you know, and you reverse it and put it on this side and do that one. And it'll, in order to register these, we have to put in those blocks, opposite sides. It has to be exactly the same curve as this inside part. I suggest using a piece of foam core and held into a little jig that lines up on the top, and that you can then do a rough cut to get it close, and take a pencil and scribe it in, and then cut the foam core again, and then use that foam core piece to then draw onto your MDF to get them the same. You only have to make one. It's going to be the same on both sides, right? The other thing is people often use these to push on the, I don't find these work that easily. It doesn't slide easy enough for me.
Or you have plastic ones that slide too easily.
And so you could kind of get the profile of your bowl like that, and you could use that to trace. But I think using foam core is going to be, especially once you have a little jig to hold the foam core to do it. It's going to be way easier to do than using a pin gauge like that. The blocks should be about 1.5 inches deep into the bowl, and they should reach more or less to the bottom of the bowl, but they don't have to go across attached to the bottom of the bowl, just on the wall. Use hot glue to put those in. You end up taking that, I should have brought a piece of MDF with a profile cut on it. You put a whole pile of hot glue on it, stick it on to the wall, it's going to ooze out, and then you take a popsicle stick, thin one, with a radius on the end, and you fill it in that hot glue so that it's forming a fillet along the side of the block. That gives it a lot of rigidity. So those, you can imagine when we have those little bands and you have that little thin piece of MDF sitting there, it could break off quite easily. So you want to have it well filtered and really held in well. Once you've put your marks on, cut them on the bandsaw, check again, do a fine pencil cut, a fine pencil draw on it to take out the gaps. Maybe go to a disc sander and just sand to the line to get it really close so you get a perfect fit. That would be the best way to do it.
Lee,
Yes?
what size bandsaw blade are you using to cut this?
So, John Beaver says he's using a 6-tooth 1/4 inch to cut these. I think you could go down, I would go to a 3/16 myself.
Go to what
A
size?
3/16 bandsaw blade. Yeah. And you could even, for doing the MDF blocks and all that stuff, you could even use a scroll, the mechanical scroll saw with a very fine blade in it if you wanted to. But for doing these cuts here, you use a bandsaw with a 3/16 or something, or a 1/4 inch blade. The arc you're cutting is about 8 inches, so it isn't a really tight arc that you're cutting. So you don't need to have a really like an 1/8 inch blade. You don't need to go that small. So in this photo, we see putting the block in. So he would have put a large pile of hot glue on that edge, pushes it in place. There's a lot of ooze out. You can just barely see it here. It's oozed out, and before that sets, he'll go along with a popsicle stick and just make it into a fillet so that it's coming up the sides on both of these. The hole will be drilled in here and go down the length of this, and it'll go down to as low as you're going to go on the bowl, as however far down you're going to cut. So if you're cutting like that bowl that was stacked with all of those pieces, your hole would have to go right to the bottom of that in order to have it register. Okay, attaching the blocks. So thick layer of hot melt glue is applied to the MDF, pressed into the wall. The glue that oozes out, shaped with a fillet. Yeah. You're going to drill a perpendicular 1/4 inch hole into that block. You're going to use a 1/4 inch dowel, and that dowel will want to just slide in there nicely. You don't want it to jam in. And what I would recommend is that you actually use an aluminum pin to put down in there. And into the end of the pin, you're going to put a threaded section into it, because that pin has to drop down below the edge of this bowl, because when you're going to turn it, and especially you haven't glued anything up here, you're relying on that being pressed together between the headstock and holding it all together, and those pins are keeping the pieces from turning as you turn it. So
So if you were doing two bowls, you'd make sure that your blocks were set up
exactly the same.
Yeah, got it.
Right.
That's where
Right.
the jig comes in.
Yep. And that's where the jig comes in. Yep. And this jig thing, this is something I've dreamt up on my own. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Even though I haven't done it, but I've been thinking about it, and I've designed on paper everything that's going to happen to make this work easily. I mean, I watched John Beaver do it, and he just comes with a drill, and he just goes like this and like that, and yeah, okay. I'm just wondering if it's really straight, because those pieces have to slide on and off those pins, and if they're a little bit of an angle, you're never going to get it apart. And like I say, then if you have those aluminum pins with the threads in it, you could then come with the screw it into the top of the dowel, pull it out, make a little handle for it to get it back out of there. Okay. Cutting the wave. Do a single cut, mount the bowl onto the jig. So, I'm not going to mount this onto the board yet, but we would put this on like so. Now remember, I was saying how I wanted that to cut. So if my orientation wasn't right, now, so you undo these two knobs here, and now we can rotate our bowl until we get it to the place that we want to see, and then lock it back in place. And so this would be mounted onto this plate. Our saw, so the operation would be, first of all, you bring the bowl face up to the blade. This pivot point actually slides. So this if this is locked in, this can slide back and forth like so. So we would be up to the blade. I haven't added it yet because it's a little bit of machining to get the little strip that goes on here. A little piece of plexiglass that matches up to this plexiglass, and this has a little etch line on it exactly up to there. This scale then is on a little sliding piece so that you can set it to 0. If I find 0 on here, you would set this piece up so it's at 0, and then you're going to decide where you want that band to come. So let's say you want the apex to be, and this is going to be your apex of the band that you're cutting. So you're going to line it here, you're going to come in, cut, and away it goes.
Pivoting through the blade.
You're pivoting through the blade.
Oh,
Okay?
light bulb. There you
Light
go.
bulb, light bulb. Okay, then you're going to undo this, and you're going to say, okay, I want my band to be a 1/4 inch. You're going to advance this 1/4 inch. It's going to be back this way. No, it'll be there. You're going to advance it a 1/4 inch, lock it down again. You've got the same pivot point. You haven't changed the pivot point on here. And you're going to pass it through
Yeah, we
again.
can go through the blade backwards that way.
My blade is here.
Yeah.
So this is
But
the
teeth are-
tooth.
The
This-
teeth are facing you,
Yeah.
so you can't bring it back that way. You have to come back this way.
No, this is actually, so we're looking at the front, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's just messing with you.
Anyway, yes, so
I was
on
I was
this,
assuming you were facing the,
yes, this part of the jig is hanging off the bandsaw. This part is on the bandsaw, and this is where the kerf is here. Okay? So on my bandsaw, if I was standing here and operating it, this would be sitting like this. I guess while I have this up, I'll just show you.
Oh, that strip, those are the pivot pins?
These are the pivot holes here. So those are very accurately machined, threaded in a straight line. This first pin is 4 inches from where the blade is going to come. And as I was saying, if you're doing an 8-inch bowl, you want to have an arc of about 8 inches, thereabouts. And so you would come into the 8-inch pinhole here. If you're doing a larger bowl, you might come back into 9 or 10 back here. So each one of these is 1/2 inch apart as you go through.
And are you clamping that onto your table?
Yes, you clamp this onto the table.
Looks like an auxiliary.
But the thing is, what somebody was saying is you can't just go back.
No. Yeah, well, what you have to do is have the bandsaw shut off and put it back into the original position before you
Yeah.
advance it up to do your cut. So on the on the bottom of this, I'll just hold it right there. On the bottom of this, there's a bearing cup in here with 2 bearings in it. It's an aluminum cup that I've machined. It takes a 6mm bolt. It'll come through like that. I have a little spacer out of brass that just, when it's locked down hard onto this aluminum, it just allows it to spin without being any flop in there. Probably can't see it, but a little bit of nice detail with inlaid knobs for that. Just because I'm expecting it to outlive me, so
Some people have too much time.
people have too much time. That's right.
Because you could.
Because I could.
and I wanted to.
And I wanted to. I had this disc laser cut for me with 24 holes in it, so that we had we could rotate it incrementally when we want to do those offset cuts, to be precise. This goes up and down depending on the size of bowl. Right now I've got really the wrong type of anchor bolt in there. It actually, once you tighten it up, it kind of locks in and it doesn't allow it to slide. So I have to make another little sliding thing that'll slide, because this one slides quite easily, right? This one not so much. If I have this totally undone, it's really hard to push, because those little grippy pins, they actually rotate like this and kind of lock themselves in. So I have to change that up. But the idea is that you would bring this right down to the board here, so that the bowl is supported by the plate as well. This is something that nobody else's jig does. Everybody else's jigs just have maybe 3 big holes for 3 different sizes of bowls, but the bowl is always just sitting free in the air, and just the sheer pull of the bandsaw could rotate this. Could even tear it away from it. But if it's actually sitting on the wood here, it's supported and kept, you know, horizontal.
So you're gonna patent that?
I don't think so.
You should.
I don't think so. Now, it's always tricky to get this little bushing in place, because that. Okay. So now,
Oh, it's on a pivot.
let's get that pivot. There. All right. So let's pick a pivot point.
You get a
Right there.
wave just going like that through it.
I'd have to see it in action. Still a mystery.
Okay. So that's I've got that tightened down pretty hard on there.
Beautiful.
So so I'm standing here. My bandsaw blade is right here. So it's important to have a center line lined up with this, and the front tooth on your bandsaw has to be right at that cut point. You're going to decide. So right now I'm not quite far enough ahead to even make a cut. So I would go here. I would be up against the blade at that point. I would put a mark, a register mark. That's my first. I want to be 3/4 of an inch in. So I move this 3/4 of an inch. Lock her down. Okay, I'm going to start up the bandsaw. And we're going to just grab that piece. Now, your hands are a little bit away from that. Boom. Cut away that piece.
Now, Dave, you need to register that table on your bandsaw.
This is registered on, yes.
Okay.
My big magnets will be mounted in the bottom of this so that it clamps down on. On this front edge, there's going to be 2 slots cut in here. I just have to get on a bandsaw that's big, because mine isn't big enough, to know where these slots have to be. And then there will be a perpendicular piece that will come into the back of your. So if this is the front edge of your table, that register will come in like that, and then you'll take 2 clamps and clamp it into that. Okay. So we've now done our first cut. We've advanced it. We do our second cut. Yes.
Just wondering what size of bandsaw works well for these
So,
projects?
It's how much height you have here. So you need to have one that has at least 12 inches. I've kind of designed this for like a 17 or a large 16, like a 16 that has a throat on it, like a foot throat, or an 18, something like that. If you've got a 14, you could do small bowls on a 14, but you know, you couldn't, like on my bandsaw, I couldn't do anything more than about 5 inches. Because I've only got a 6-inch throat. I'm losing 3/4 of an inch already with the plate. So,
I wonder if the base for the little ripper that they sell out of Ontario would fit on your thing, because their base that they have is that plexi. Seems exactly the same thing you do there, and it fits like on Rickon and bandsaws like that. I got one of those at home, they're about 8 feet.
yeah?
And it's so sturdy, it's unreal.
Huh.
It's pretty close to that. And I bet you 10 to 1, if you look it up, I bet you 10 to 1 it fits on that, and it's saving the grief.
Well, there you go. So there is 2 big bearings held in here, so that this is very rigid because of the 2 stacked bearings. So the bearings are about that thick. Well, they a little more than 3/4 of an inch for sure. So I had to make this piece on the lathe, and these pieces are all turned on the lathe. It was a little bit scary having that big thing flinging around, but you know, just to get the precision to cut everything. This is these are done with phenolic. This front plate is phenolic, and this back plate is phenolic, 1/4 inch phenolic.
Bad stuff to breathe.
Bad stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the size and the number of turns on the shaft?
Oh, this is a 1-inch shaft, eight threads per. That's a standard small lathe
Right on.
head onto this. I am going to get my machinist friend to make me 1 1/4 to go on this as well. The 1 1/4 will actually mount a little bit differently than this. It'll be a piece of. It'll have to come down to. It'll have a shoulder cut into it. You start off with an 1 1/2 piece, big shoulder to 1 1/4. That'll slide into here. And then the nut will actually tighten from the back side instead of from the front, like this one does.
I'm just thinking my Nova, we'll probably just get a 1-inch
Yeah,
insert instead of my 1 1/4.
yeah, yeah. You could do that too. You could just change out your inserts. Yeah.
So after you make your first cut, how do you line up for the second cut?
Well, everything you're for is moved.
So
You just bring it slowly.
you just slide it ahead, lock it down,
I'd have to see a video on this thing.
and you just go and you make exactly the same cut again.
So you feel it point
One
to
thing,
the
in,
and you just
a
slide
few
it.
years ago, I cut a rim on the outside of a really dry piece of wood,
Mm-hmm.
and then turned the center down, and then tried to put the circle back on the outside, and it had warped, even though it was really dry wood.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was green wood, albeit
No.
dried for 6 months, and then
Yeah.
whatever, I mean, it's not bone dry, it's not
Yeah.
kiln dried.
Right. Yeah.
What's to stop those waves and the wood from warping enough, unless you do it like everything in one?
You almost have to do it all in one shot. Now the other thing that I want to talk about, so we've kind of covered that. Yeah. So you're on the bowl, you want to start your wave about 1/3 of the way in, so that the center and your wave wants to be about 1/3 of the depth of your bowl, and then 1/3 at the base, so it's kind of thirds through your bowl.
So if you
So
wanna
you could-
do like 2 waves or 3 waves, you do all your cutting in
From
one shot while you're set up there?
so
Or do you cut, re-glue, turn,
No.
cut, re-glue, turn?
no, you do all your cuts at once.
So once you're set up,
Yeah, you do all your cuts at once. Boom, boom, boom.
and when you're doing the cutouts that are like this?
Yes.
How do you get, like they're not symmetrical all the way?
Yes. So those ones. So that first cut you've done like this.
Yeah.
Now you're going to take this one undo, and you're going to say, okay, in order for me to get my next cut, I'm going to go 1/3 of the way, or let's say right there.
8 holes.
You're going to go 6 holes or something like that. Lock it back in.
And you write that down.
And you right back and you do that cut, and now you've got an offset cut from your first cut, and that gives you that narrow section, wide section. But you got to plan that ahead. You can't turn that that piece, it has to still be lined up with your points in here. You know, you can't change it that way. You've got to change it with the indexer in order to get that change. Yeah,
If
it's
you move the indexer, you're also moving the bowl.
you're moving the whole bowl. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. You've now moved the bowl, and that gives your arc a different
Orientation.
or a different orientation on the bowl.
That's what I'm saying, how do you line up this arc with that arc?
Because
Because you have the lineup.
you've got the lineup
Holes
pins
inside.
inside.
The pins are all lined up on the inside,
Yeah.
so you can put everything.
And you remember that guy was holding that one piece in, so there'd be one piece here, one piece there. One of them you're gonna mark with some black, so that you know that you don't get it reversed.
Okay, we need a video,
Put a
Dave.
line down the whole-
Yeah, you need a video. Well, you could
I
watch.
put a line down the whole inside and outside of the bowl,
You can do that too.
and then cut what you want, and then reline, right along
Yeah.
that line.
Yeah, you could do that too. But remember that you're gonna be cutting away either the wave or the bowl, or the outside of the bowl, and so that's gonna disappear too. So that's why you need those indexers. The last thing you do is, once you've got it all glued back up together and everything, and that's the other thing, when you go to glue these things up, you're gonna do it on the lathe. And use this in your tailstock, and that's where you're gonna get your pressure to hold it all together. And you're gonna leave it on there for the glue to set, and then you can turn. And you can turn it, and the idea is for this plate to always be there when you're turning, so that it doesn't go flying apart on you.
Okay, so I'm confused. We're cutting out rings,
Yes?
machining those rings, either
Yes.
thinner or leaving them proud
Yeah,
of the bowl.
yeah.
And in order to do that, we have to have other
You would need,
waist rings, what can I call
yes,
them?
yes, waist rings, that's right. And the waist
Put in,
rings,
So when do you cut those?
so,
Like, sorry, I'm just
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to go
yeah.
backwards.
Yeah. So
forward.
you could have another one of these
Oh,
with
so
a
you gotta
block.
have two bowls going.
You might have to have two bowls going,
Oh,
or you know what?
double the fun.
You could just have a stack like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a bowl, as long as it's as as long as it's got the right belly to it here.
So you could mount a chunk of 2x8
Yes.
on it, do the same curve cut that you have
Yeah.
in the mount your other piece to.
That's right.
And then, yeah, okay.
Yep. To make up your spacers. The other thing that they do, and I thought this was interesting, so he would take a piece of spruce, let's say, cut it on the bandsaw, make it a 1/4 inch thick, 8 inch, however wide your bowl is.
Mm-hmm.
You got this slab with a straight piece.
And just put them across.
You wrap that up in a cloth or in paper towel. You saturate that paper towel or cloth with water. Put it in your microwave for 2 minutes, and you've now steam bent your piece of wood. And you have all of this set up ready to go, your pieces. You put that piece on, you put it all together, and you use that as a form to reform it to the curve. Yep. To make your spacers that you need. Yep. It's
So
a
I've gotta
complicated
have
process.
I've gotta have two bowls and a blank-ish something for a spacer. And
Well.
I have to cut the original bowl,
Yeah.
cut that out,
Yep.
the second bowl for the insert
Yep.
piece,
Yep.
and then the spacer
Yep.
for the glue up
Yeah.
and turn of the original bowl.
So I would
Is
say.
that- Am I getting?
Yeah,
is that the sequence?
you could go that route, but let's say, in a lot of those ones you saw, it's the same piece, the band is made from the same piece of wood. All he's done is either made the band narrower or the bowl narrower for it to protrude. Or you could just have the wave accented with the veneer strips.
Okay, so if I wanted to narrow the band, I would have to glue it to the band bowl, the one I took the band.
You don't have to glue it. You just have to hold it.
Well, if you were to turn it narrower, you'd need to glue it to the form, wouldn't you?
You just have to index it to the blocks inside. And what they do with those ones where I said he just steam bends it,
Yeah.
he just drills an oversized hole, and it's a whole sheet that's going over the curve, and then he just puts that together. When you put your next piece on there, those holes will actually line up, and you can drill back through the existing holes in order to put a pin in there to keep it from turning. It's a complicated process, but I think it's doable.
Integral calculus is easier.
It's very doable. Okay, I think we've already talked about doing the protruding ring. That's the easiest one to do because you're going to take the ring, you've cut it away from this, it's already big. You're going to do the little hole thing to get your holes there. You're going to put this back on with a spacer in there made out of something. Same thickness as your rings. Put that back in together. It's not glued, it's just held like that under pressure. The pins are indexing it to keep it from going out of whack. You turn this down to the thinner wall. Then you're going to, after you've done that, you've got your protruding one, you're going to do whatever treatment you're going to do to that band. You're going to do your treatments to the outside of this, whatever you're going to do, so that it's all finished. You're going to put glue on the rim of this, put your band on, put glue on the other rim, put it on top of the band, stack it together, glue it up. And you're going to remount it on the lathe, and you're going to do the inside. And the insides are always finished, just smooth
Yeah, for sure.
on the inside. So it's just to do a pass to get that. And then you're going to do whatever treatment you're going to do to the inside. Complicated, but you know what? It's how you get into the next level of turning, right?
I think that's about 4 levels away.
It seems like it, but you know what?
I don't think this
It isn't as hard as you think. And you can start off just doing one cut through, put veneer lamination in there, thin lamination, glue it up. Easy.
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 That's going from driving one of those coffee
Yes, Ted.
So what's
things
next?
to a Ferrari.
What's next for you?
Okay, what's next for me is to go to either your place or Robert's place and have a bowl ready to cut and start doing some cuts. Yeah, like I say, most of you know that I've been ill for a while, and I haven't been out to the shop as much as I would have liked to.
Sounds like the mine hasn't stopped.
But I've been thinking about this project for a long time. I know I've talked with Ted about this, a year and a half ago at least.
At least a year and a half I've been hearing about this.
Yeah. How the plans for
I'm
it.
still as confused as you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Video. You need to make a video, Dave.
Well, we'll make a video. And I do have
Come together then.
John Beaver's video. It's an 2-hour long video.
To see that.
And
Send us the URL.
yeah, I will send out a URL. I'll send it to Callum and he can send it out to people. Yeah. And I want to say that sometime in April, not sure when, but Ted has agreed that we could go to his place, use his bandsaw, and I think 3 or 4 people, we could get together and cut rings. And
So have bowls ready.
have bowls ready, yep.
Mounted on chucks.
Mounted on chucks, yep.
Find something
Yep.
to turn a bowl for.
And well, as long as you have a good tenon on it, I mean, I'll bring a few chucks along, and you know, once we start cutting, you don't want to really take that chuck off of the bowl once you start cutting. So, and for now, I think we're pretty stuck with just using a 1-inch by 8. Yeah. So if your lathe is
Plenty strong.
yeah, if your lathe has a bigger headstock than that, and you can change your bushings, just change the bushing in between mounting it on this and mounting it on the lathe. Sorry. It's just I can't add even more length and move it further out.
It's better if you can adjust the,
Yeah, adjust your lathe. Am I turning that the right way?
Yep.
So
There we
when
go.
you're cutting, does that line up so that it's pulling the bowl tighter, the chuck tighter, or is it pulling it looser? I'm trying to picture. You know what I mean, as it's passing through the blade? Which way
It's
is
pulling
the
it
blade
tighter.
pulling?
It's pulling it tighter.
Oh, that's perfect then, yeah.
Oh no, it
No, it's
no, it
pulling
isn't.
it.
It's loosening it.
Uh-oh.
So,
So you're
a lot.
gonna-
I know on the Nova lathes.
More machining, I see a grub
No,
store in
no.
your future.
Yes, there is a good. There should be a. This little one doesn't have it, but on normal Nova chucks, there is a grub screw that you can tighten down onto the shaft to keep it from rotating. But I think I just undid that. Couldn't have had it very tight. I think if this is locked in, I don't know, that's a lot of force.
Your bowl's gonna be first, so.
Yeah. I think that's probably gonna be good.
well, also, if you.
And this is gonna be
run it
lower
so
down
so it's actually
onto the
resting
table.
on the top side.
Yeah, it's gonna be less likely to turn. Yeah. Okay.
Are you worried at all with your jig of it wearing on the plywood after a while? No?
No, because there's a little bushing in there that's keeping it just the right height. There's actually almost no contact between this and this. It's just barely floating there. Because I just machined that little brass piece, so I just had enough clearance, just so that it's free. It's free turning, but not enough that it's moving up and down. So it's just on it, just turning. You can come up and try it and see.
Put a piece of crazy carpet on the bottom of it.
You actually probably wax it too. It wouldn't-
You probably could wax it and it would even be less. Yep. So, anyway, I think I'm gonna stop there.
Question online.
Yes? I sure can. That's right.
Now that you've heard the answer, you have to guess the question.
Absolutely.
What is
Yeah.
Wood turning jeopardy.
Okay. So the question was, how smooth is the cut going to be from the bandsaw? And what I'm telling him is, it has to be really smooth.
That's right.
Now, because this has no play in it, when you swing that through, and you do it very steadily, without any hesitation, it's got to be really smooth through, you should get a perfect cut. And you're using a very thin blade with lots of teeth, with not too much offset. Should give you a good cut.
Small curve,
Tighten your blade.
Yeah.
tighten blade,
Yes, lots of tension on your blade.
and your bearing, and your rider bearing in place.
Is that good, Jim?
And hold your thumb to the left, right?
Yeah. Right.
With your chains.
Okay.
That's my marathon work, okay?
Okay. Any more questions?
When do we do
I
the-
hope I. Sorry.
When do we do the IQ test?
The IQ test. Well, I hope I haven't bored you all to pieces.
No, no.
It's very interesting.
Confused, but not.
Thanks. And so you can actually hold on to here, swing this through, and your blade is out here. So your hand is never going to be close to the blade to do the swing.
Except when you're catching the edge.
Except when you're catching the edge, you could actually have somebody else there, or you could put a little piece of tape on it. As you do that first cut, put a piece of tape on it here,
I'll get the guy.
and as you swing it through the rest of the way, it at least won't fall off or fling into the blade.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And John Beaver's thing, he recommends if you have a buddy to have him come and do the catch. Because although the blade's quite close here, where it's cutting down here, it's quite wide. So as you go through, you've got more meat on the backside to grab.
Or you could hold it with
Unless you're
some kind of
doing
clamp.
Or you could do it with some kind of a clamp or something on it. You could have something that grabs into it that you could hold on to. There's lots of things we can play with to figure it out to make it safer.
Yeah.
I think
You
a
see when
stepper
you slide
motor,
it out,
remote
it's
control.
all on the same grade.
Remote control. I was thinking about this. Now, could I do this with a clock drive motor and make this go through?
Probably could.
Probably could. Yeah, probably could. Anyway.
I have some treadmill motors, you know, the ones
Yeah, yeah.
that raise and lower.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll gladly give you one if you can figure it out.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
There you go.
I don't know if this is recording.
Good.
Okay, it is. Voila.
Hey, but here the stars are, that's what doesn't stick.
Stop.
You're awful brittle, be careful.
Awful brittle.
Yeah. But the way the grains go, that's nice.
Yeah. Okay.